Welcome everybody to the Photography Brothers podcast. We have a really exciting podcast in store for you today, and let me tell you right now, when you went into your app of choice and you clicked on this podcast, you made an excellent decision, because not only am I here, Jared Poirier, your photography brother, I'm also joined by another incredibly talented photographer and creative known as...
Michael. Hi, I'm Michael Costa. Nice to meet you.
Michael, who forgot that podcasting is an audio format, and if he raises his hand to say hello to you, you can't see that.
Well, in all fairness, how was I supposed to know if you were going to say my name or not? I was waiting for that second, you know?
I never have.
Well, you're like, I'm joined by, I know, but you was, okay.
You know, it's like the structure of how we do it. Anyways, it's not important. We're here. We have Michael Costa. He's drinking a coffee. We have Jared Poirier. He's drinking a coffee too. Hey. We're here. We're your photography brothers. We've been shooting videos and photos like crazy. And we've learned a couple of things along the way, and we're here to share some of that with you, whether that be things that we've been nailing, where we can tell you some advice, or things where we've been failing, and we can kind of share some wisdom from that perspective as well, of all the things that you learn when you fail at one thing or another. And when Michael Costa brought this topic to me, what did I say, Michael, when you brought today's topic?
I think you said like absolutely perfect or something like that.
Absolutely the perfect topic, which is
it's essentially like the difficulty of finding balance at different commitment levels in your career. So for Jared, he's a full-time creative, which brings its own hurdles. And for me, I am, I guess, what you would call an after hours creative. So that typically you find somebody in that kind of position when, it's a newer business, you're still trying to figure it out, build clients, that kind of thing. And so, as it suggests, you probably have a 9-to-5 that kind of pays the bills, kind of gets you going, so that you can also fund and continue to grow your photography business.
For sure, yeah. It's a work-life balance thing, It's a real buzzword, work-life balance, and that's definitely what we're going to be talking about here. Or sorry, I feel like I cut you off there, buddy. Go ahead.
No, it's good. It's going to be really interesting though. Like, I for one am also interested in hearing, what Jared's going to say and to have that insight, because for me, I'm hoping to be in that position sooner rather than later. And so to have that idea and to plan around, some of the hurdles that Jared has faced going into, as he, again, is a full-time creative, what kind of things should I kind of keep top of mind as I transition? And so that's going to be interesting for me. But, just to kind of speak to some of the hurdles that I've had, that I go through as a part-time or as a after hours photographer. I don't like saying part-time, but there's still a heavy commitment and time obligation to it. But for one, there's demotivation, right? So, doing tons of reporting or technical blog writing, heading in and out of Excel spreadsheets, like it's not the most exciting thing in the world, right? Like when you want to get amped up to do something, you want to watch other people like doing it. So, I'd watch a Peter McKinnon video or something like that. So coming off of a job where I'm doing the furthest possible thing from being creative, sometimes that can be, it can hurt the creative process and wanting to do that thing. The other thing is hours, in a couple ways that affects you, in one way it's, look, at the end of the day, if it's the primary source of income, you need to prioritize it. So, when someone has an interesting and urgent idea that has to get done, if there is there are deadlines, there are things like that has to come first, which sometimes means that, I don't get to creating my content or working on a client's work until, 8-9 o'clock at night. How long are you willing to stay up? That's another thing. The other aspect to hours is just coordination with your clients in regards to maybe meeting or even to shooting or capturing content, right? For the most part, your client's going to want you to do so during their working hours. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, when you're working a 9 to 5, your working hours and their working hours tend to line up decently well and in a really unfortunate way. So you end up having to shoot a lot of content on weekends, which isn't ideal. You want to have you're going to do work on weekends, but you do want to have your time to obviously relax and buckle down. You don't want your passion to come across as a burden, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's essential to take a little time off, have a little bit of downtime.
Exactly. And so really, I think, from my position, it's just a lot of like having to put up with it or having to work around it a lot. And I find that can be demotivating sometimes, and it can be, and that's, you know what, sometimes it can be motivating. Sometimes you come off a really bad day and you really want to just do the opposite of that. Like whatever you just want to burst out some creativity, put a video out. But it is kind of hard to get into that headspace sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
How about you, Jared?
No, it's really cool that you're bringing the perspective of somebody who is, working a regular 9 to 5 job and how they find the time to get into that creative passion project that you were talking about. I'm personally coming from a bit of a different standpoint here, so I think that that's actually going to be an asset for us, as you were saying, that you can kind of present that to the person who is like working a 9 to 5, and I can come from the perspective of a full-time creative, and then we're approaching like the same thing as work-life balance. I also really love this topic because personally for my life, like the topic of work-life balance right now has been like, whoa, 100% what we need to be focused on. Been pushing really hard on my business. I've been trying to do a daily vlog, and on top of that, like shooting some stuff for clients and editing a lot, and being able to balance all of that has, like, honestly, I have to be honest and frank with everybody here on the podcast that I've been struggling a little bit, maybe working a little bit too hard and not quite taking care of myself. I also love the topic because I think that this is a really accessible topic that's going to, have a little bit more broad appeal here on the Photography Brothers. Sometimes we get a little into our jargon. We're talking about f-stops. We're talking shutter speeds. We're talking everything. We're talking 4K,
Frogs.
8K. We're talking frogs. We're talking a lot of stuff. But today, really, I think this is going to be a relatable episode, right? So I'm excited to get into it. From my perspective, I mean, I do relate to a lot of the stuff that you were saying, Michael, in my past life as a bartender, and also when I was one of the managers of the Toronto Vistaprint. I had my, job that I did, whether it was full-time or part-time. I still had some time after work to work on my creative stuff. And that can definitely be tough when you're trying to edit your video or edit your photos, plus then, jump in the shower. You're still thinking about editing your photos and your videos, and then you're running down to work. You're showing up a little bit late and things like that. So definitely a struggle. But don't think that just if you do transition into the role of full-time creative, which is what I've done now with my company Galaxy, I'm able to generate enough income that I don't have to have another job. And don't think that is, once you reach that point, it's just like, boom, everything's perfect. I kick my feet up. You know me, Michael. I've always got my feet kicked up. I'm always smoking a cigar. I'm always getting on my private jets and flying around, right? So, So don't really expect that just because if basically the transition would be that, like, you've got your full-time gig now, you're going to start doing some stuff on the side, and when you transition over to having a full-time creative income, there are still a lot of challenges in balancing your work and your life, and it doesn't just become easier right there.
Yeah, I can imagine, like, when you're a full-time creative, at least one thing I can kind of foresee is there is the additional pressure of that being, like you mentioned, that being the primary source. And then there's also the fact that, like, you dictate how much time you spend, and you dictate how much you want to get done.
Yeah.
And that can be a dangerous, like you mentioned, like it can be hard to, I can imagine that being hard to manage the balance of.
Yeah, definitely, man. And like this year especially, it's been hard. Coming out of 2020, where I'll be honest, I did pull the business out of a bit of a tailspin, and now we're generating like really good income, comparable to some of the best times in the business ever, actually better than we've ever done before. And I'm able to get that momentum up again. And there's just that like fear of, those bad months that everybody faced in like March and April, and like the crazy uncertainty of that. And like, man, everything that I've worked for, like I'm trying to be as honest as possible. Like at that point, April, March 2020, I was like, everything that I've worked for, is it for naught? Like, did I waste my time building this business? Am I screwed? Because like I shoot photos and videos of like events and stuff, man. So I started to kind of worry, and now that I've been able to pull myself out of that, and I've replaced that with other sources of income, whether it be doing live streams or whether it be doing more content or more video editing, has been the biggest one. And not like being afraid, honestly, of going back to a position where the business isn't thriving as much as it is right now, and kind of having that weird thing in my head where I'm like, I gotta work frickin' all the time, every hour that I can work, right? And that's obviously not healthy, and it's obviously also not true. Like I have a team now of people, I can rely upon other people, right? And the business model and the process of everything, and it's definitely it's a fallacy on one side to say that like the business owner, the creative, full-time creative, is just kicking back, but it's also a fallacy to say like you have to work 60 hours a week, or you have to you have to take on projects that you don't want, or you have to do everything that your clients say. Like having some boundaries is definitely important. Maybe taking like one day off a week or something like that. It's good.
One day.
I haven't taken a day off in forever, man. I honestly haven't. I
can imagine.
Yeah, since like the long break that I took at the end of December, it's been go.
I actually, I foresee that being the most difficult part for me, is like that transition, and then like trying to establish balance. Because like, especially as creatives, like we are naturally outside of the box thinkers, and we always have ideas, we always have things we want to do. And so when it becomes your full-time job to almost do that and think outside the box and do that kind of thing, like it's hard. I would assume it'd be hard to draw that line and be like, oh wait, hold on, like I gotta like take care of me. I got to balance my time with my loved ones, and do other things that also bring me excitement and whatever, right? Which also bring new perspectives and whatever, and can help you improve your creativity as well, and your vision. But I actually, like that it kind of freaks me out. I'm not gonna lie. But man, like I can totally see that, and I feel like the main reason that you've been able to keep things going is like you've been willing to adapt, and like I think being an entrepreneur, like especially a full-time entrepreneur, like you have to have a good relationship with change, right? And like especially like the pandemic, like you've talked to me about some of the things that you've done, and it's just really smart outside the box thinking.
Thanks, man.
And so it helps when you have that relationship with change, because it takes some of that pressure off, because you don't feel like you're locked into a box, right?
Yeah, certainly. I definitely have. It's a weird problem to have. I honestly love my work, and owning a business is something that it allows me to do what I love to do. I don't have a boss. There's so many good things about it. It allows me to set my own time, like you were saying, when I want to work and when I want to not. But the really hard part, especially since I enjoy what I do so much, is like, you're right, like transferring over, like being able to sit down and work hard on something and focus on it and get excited about it. Because I do, like when I nail some color grading or something, or like a transition or whatever on my in Premiere, and I'm like, oh man, this looks so good. Or when I first learned masking, I was like, oh man, I'm learning more Premiere stuff. And being able to like go from being excited about that and then being able to kind of switch gears and actually chill out and actually take care of to be more specific, my girlfriend Masha, my dog Sonia, get away from the thing that I'm so excited to be doing. But there are other exciting things in life, right? And
yeah, exactly,
as a creative, as an artist, like obsession is a real thing, right? And
yeah.
and we talk about photography here, but we also talk about other forms of art like filmmaking and music and stuff like that. And kind of broadly how it's really interesting how like certain themes continue to come up, and one is definitely like the obsession of the artist, right? When you have people like Prince, who would be staying up all night. He would kick all the musicians out and be like, I'm gonna record this myself. And they'd be like, yo, you should go to bed. And he's like, if I don't record this song tonight, Michael Jackson will record it tomorrow. Like that level of obsession, right? Yeah. And then, to your Stanley Kubricks and all these other crazy directors, right? Who will do anything for art. So, obsession can produce results sometimes, but I think it also can be a detriment, and that's really like the biggest thing that I need to get good at now, man. I think I'm good at working hard. I'm good at having a vision. I'm good at getting like other people invested in what I'm doing. I guess like to get other people to like believe in what we're doing together. But yeah, being able to switch that kind of motivated, I guess, and like hardworking brain off and just chill out is also really important, right? You got to put some gas back in the tank to come back to your work, right?
Yeah, those are some good tips, man. I think for anyone who's watching, who's kind of going through that 9 to 5 thing, and that's kind of your perspective right now. I think one thing that's kind of helping me out a little bit is just imagining that is one of your clients instead of it being your 9 to 5 dragging you down. So it's like it's just your biggest client, and like they're paying you the money, so you got to do it, but it's your biggest client, and then when that's over, it's on to the next.
Yeah, that's
so it's just a perspective change. Yeah. Yeah.
Rather than that thing that takes all your time.
Yeah, I know. And it's like, and also thinking of it as something that's completely unrelated to the thing that you're doing.
Right.
Thinking of it as the thing that you just have a contract for and you're doing majority of the time. But I'd be curious to know down in the comments below, like where do you sit right now? Are you a full-time creative, or are you new to the game? You're trying to get to that place. What kind of hurdles are you facing, and what kind of tips do you have? Because I think this is largely an experience for all of us to learn from each other. So I think that'd be really, really cool to learn from everybody.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, if we want to get into some tips, I mean, it wouldn't be very honest of us, since I think both of us are kind of screwing this up, work-life balance thing. But what I can say is that I have acknowledged the problem. I have publicly acknowledged the problem here on the podcast, and also on the vlog over on the Galaxy channel. And now it's about addressing that. Yesterday, I did do a bit of a workout for the first time in a while, a little bit of meditation. I find the best way for me to meditate is if I just like go in the bath, turn off all the lights, and just sit like in a dark room and have it actually be quiet. I live in downtown Toronto, so there's always a lot going on. So for me, I need kind of a sensory deprivation thing. But yeah, doing those workouts, planning it out, scheduling it the same way that I've been scheduling client work or my content, like put it down on paper so that you're like, oh, I have to do a workout right now, and that type of thing, I think is definitely going to be helping me. And again, like on the topic of scheduling, right? Like you want to schedule a date with your girlfriend. I know you can't go out right now, but it's Alexa, right?
Alexa, right?
Alexa, and she's not a robot that made by Amazon. We've
not that I know of yet.
We have confirmed it. I'm a pretty good researcher, and I haven't been able to uncover any conspiracies on that front, right? But yeah, things like that. Every day I wake up and I take my dog Sonia for a walk every single day, right? First thing, right? Brew up my coffee, take Sonia, then I come back, then I can work. So yeah, just having a little bit of a little bit more self-care, and yeah, not coming from a desperate place. I think that's really like, in terms of if I'm going to give like a business tip here, you never want to operate from a place of desperation in your business. You always want to operate from a place of confidence, and you want to be sure that like every decision that you're making is the best decision. And yeah, sometimes or all the time, taking care of yourself is a big part of it. So.
I love that you brought that up, because that was something I was thinking about. Because when I said my tip, I was like, that doesn't help with balance. That helps with perspective, but and motivation perhaps. But the scheduling part is really important. Regardless of your full time or part time, like they both have their thing. And so, like, the one thing I think for everyone to understand is, like, as a creative, especially as a full-time creative, I assume, like, that schedule's gonna get like disregarded from time to time. Like how you spend your time in a creative sense is like not exactly like a 9 to 5 kind of book it all the time, right? You have a client who calls, has an urgent request, you got to go in. A new client, you got to go in. Like there are so many factors that kind of come in, like deadlines or whatever, and so like that schedule is you're not going to be able to follow that schedule all the time, and that's okay. And I think that's going to be the big thing that I think we want to get across here is like, set your schedule and your routine and try to follow it. And if it doesn't work out and like there's a week where it's all effed up, like it's cool. Like don't disregard it and like throw it out because you think it doesn't work. Just keep doing it. If you need to make changes, make some changes, but keep trying to have that, like Jared said, set that time aside to do the other things and experience everything else.
Definitely. It's a lot like if you're trying to quit drinking or quit smoking or something like that, right? Like, oh, I didn't drink for a week, and then you have one Michelob Ultra.
Yeah.
and then you go and get a 60 a Jack.
That's right. That's right.
It's not how it works. It's like, okay, you had one Michelob Ultra, maybe have like 2 more, and then tomorrow try not to drink any Michelob Ultras at all, right?
That's right.
So yeah, don't give up, and don't try to hold yourself to a standard of being perfect, right? It's more, you're absolutely right, Michael. It's more about getting those good habits in place. And that doesn't happen right away, right? So like if you're listening to this and you've been either in a position where that Michael's in, where you're pretty pooched from your 9 to 5, and you're trying to do some creative work on the side and really trying to bring the motivation and passion to it, or whether you're coming from more of a perspective of my perspective, which is like that of a full-time creator, just don't beat yourself up. Give yourself a little bit of room. You gotta allow your mind to go to sometimes we push our mind to a lot of extremes. Like I think when I'm shooting, that's pretty much like about as extreme as it gets, especially when I'm doing like a live setting. There's so many things to think about. Are all the cameras on? Are we switching between the cameras well enough? Is the sound
Is my battery charged?
Clear? Is my battery charged? Luckily, man, this Canon, I'm telling you, this episode of Photography Brothers is brought to you by Canon, because I started with 2 out of 4 bars. We're sitting at 25 minutes in here. I still got 2 bars. Wow. It's freaking nuts, man. It's freaking nuts. But yeah, don't beat yourself up. Shoot Canon and try to be easy on yourself. Try to take some time off.
Disregard the Canon statement, and Jared's spot on. Yep.
Anything else on work-life balance, Michael?
I think that's good. I'm more so interested in seeing if anyone else has something to teach us.
Yeah, definitely. See. We love comments. If you're watching on YouTube, please leave us some comments. And maybe you also have some comments on our next segment, which is the Photography Brothers News. Okay. Welcome to Photography Brothers News, where we bring you the latest and greatest news on the topic of photography. And today's news story is no exception. Michael Costa has brought us a great topic. We all had a great time digesting that and working through the topic today. And I hope that everybody enjoys this news story. Definitely got the old gears turning in my head, in my nerdy mind. There are a lot of things to think about in relation to this news story, so let's get into it. Another one from Petapixel. We have a news story here. Shutterstock bets 75 million that photography won't always involve cameras. Whoa. Yep. Scary title. Scary title. So basically what Petapixel is talking about here is Shutterstock's acquisition of a little company called Turbo Squid. Do you mind telling the people what Turbo Squid does?
Turbo Squid is like a 3D render stock company. Mm-hmm. So you can find like... for example, some of you might go and click on the link, and you'll end up on the blog post that kind of covers this. There's like an image of a mug, and there's coffee in it, and it's been manipulated by some sort of graphic designer who created that, and it's kind of like an alternative for visual assets.
An alternative, and if you really read into the title here, maybe a replacement. I don't really think so, but we'll definitely get into it. So Turbo Squid is this big company that makes these 3D renders, and this is kind of a new approach to stock photography, and it's actually become a lot more popular. Ever since the lockdowns and everything related to COVID, photographers haven't been able to get out and shoot as much as usual. So companies are starting to find some different ways of getting new stock photos, and this is one of them, being able to do it kind of as a like a digital render instead of an actual photo. Similar to what we've seen in movies before, right? Like instead of actually using videography, you're instead building it with CGI inside of a computer. So Shutterstock is interested in getting into that game, and they're doing that in a big way here with the purchase of Turbo Squid. And with that purchase, they get all of the photos, all of the IP that Turbo Squid has, along with all of their talent, all of the people, all of these artists who are really good with 3D render software, and all of the customers as well of Turbo Squid. So pretty interesting stuff here. Two things that I wanted to go into. I'll try to be brief on this, but I do think that it's enlightening, and it's really going to help everybody understand the story a lot better if we go a little bit into the history of Shutterstock. And then I want to tell you guys a little bit about some stuff that I know about 3D rendering and how this is actually working, how these artists are able to do that stuff. And I'm sure Michael will have lots of insights to bring as we dive in here. Cool if I talk about Shutterstock for a while.
Yeah.
Go for it, man. All right. I'm excited to do it because this is a pretty cool story. So Shutterstock was founded by John Oringer, who is now a billionaire. He has a net worth of $1 billion, which means that he has $1 billion in his bank account. Right, Michael?
Yes.
No, that is not what net worth is.
I got you. I know.
I got you.
It's like the worth of all of his assets and his
it's the worth of all of his stuff if he sold his house and everything. So he's 46 and he is worth $1 billion, which means I've only got about 16 years before I'm gonna have $1 billion, I'm assuming, with the current trajectory. So he was born in New York State. He is kind of a computer nerd, but also kind of a rad guy. We'll see he starts doing computer programming on his super old school Apple computer. And at the same time, he's doing guitar lessons for cash. So pretty interesting. Oh, are you an Apple dude? I never even knew that. Are you an Apple guy?
Yeah, well, for the
my
most
God.
part.
We'll talk about this later.
Although my working, well, hey, I edit all my content on a PC.
Okay,
but
all right. Thank God.
that was more recently. Okay, I
Thank
still
God.
got my iPad, I got my MacBook, I got my AirPods, all that stuff.
We already have enough to fight about with Sony. Don't even start bringing Apple into this mess. Yeah, he eventually gets a Master of Science in Computer Science. I guess that shouldn't surprise anybody, since he ended up coding this crazy company on the internet. And even back then, he was starting small companies, doing things like pop-up blockers, firewalls, accounting, copyright management. I think that last one is going to really be ringing some bells here. And all of these companies are based on subscription models, with him as the only employee. So he's doing everything himself, something that I tried to do for a while with very little success. This dude seemed to be crushing it. He found Shutterstock in 2003. He shot 100,000 photos and then edited down to 30,000, which is what he initially uploads onto the website. Guess what camera he used to shoot these photos?
Don't say Canon.
The Canon Rebel, the original Canon Rebel. Again, you know what? These news, I gotta call some people out here. You news writers out there, you guys, in your articles, you never get specific about the cameras, okay? And this came up with the Brini photo. You can't just say that they shot it on a Nikon DSLR. That could mean anything. That could mean a camera literally from like $200 that I can buy right now, like at the frickin' take out of the garbage. Someone threw it in the garbage probably, and it would be a Nikon DSLR, and you'd throw it in the garbage. And it's maybe worth 150 at the frickin' I don't know, the pawn shop to a camera that costs like $10,000. Like, those are Nikon DSLRs, right? So anyways, nobody says specifically, but it's 2003 Canon Rebel. You're probably talking about the 300D. Not a great camera by today's standards, obviously, but this is what the man shot his photos on. So we have 30,000 photos in 2003, subscription-based model, and 3 years later, we have about 600,000 photos.
Wow, unreal.
Shutterstock is headquartered in New York City. Now they have 200 million photos and 10 million videos and about 700 employees. So pretty interesting thing here. And with the thing that I want to point out here with acquiring Turbo Squid, they're spending a lot of money on this, man. $75 million. If we look into what the company has been making, they usually make about $160 million a quarter, at least like last year. That's basically what they did. So that's a tenth of their revenue, dude. That's a tenth of their yearly revenue that they're dropping to buy this Turbo Squid thing, this 3D rendering. They obviously have a lot of faith in it, man. Like thinking about spending 10% of my company's money on anything. Like, I spend it on employees, that's for sure, right? On like my freelancers and stuff. But like on like a piece of software or anything, I couldn't imagine. Like, that's a heavy investment. I just want to point out. Actually, ironically, the 75 million figure is pretty close to what Shutterstock pays all of their employees. If you take their salaries and add them up, you get pretty close to that number, actually. So,
well, they must be looking at it almost in a similar light, right? Like, you bring on employees, it's an initial investment that's going to help you grow in the company's objectives, right? And so like they got to have some really smart people monitoring trends, and this must be a really big growing trend that they think that this is going to grow exponentially even more in the next few years or even more. So it's almost similar in that way. It's an initial investment for long-term growth. So it's interesting. I'm curious to see how much of this do we see, in collateral moving forward with brands that we know. It's going to be interesting to see. Yeah.
Shutterstock is like pretty much on top. Adobe Stock is a close competitor, and there's obviously Getty Images. Getty Images is not doing any of this. Like they're sticking to old school photography. So, I don't think Shutterstock would be making this substantial of an investment if they didn't think that this was something, that this is where the future is going. So pretty interesting stuff. Another important thing to note is that this is not their first big acquisition. Even like in the early days of the company in 2009, I guess that's like 6 years in, they bought Big Stock, which was one of their biggest competitors in the space of stock photos. And recently in 2015, they bought Rex Features, which is like a press stock photo thing, and Premium Beats, which obviously doesn't do photos. They do like music and stuff like that. And sound effects and whatnot. Another thing that I just want to highlight quickly here because it is super relevant. Shutterstock introduced, and definitely to photographers, this is relevant. You've never shot stock photos for like a service like this, right, Michael?
I have.
Oh,
I've done it.
Oh.
I haven't been successful.
Oh.
But I have. There was a point in time where I tried doing it for a little while and seeing what happened. Yeah.
You didn't make much money.
I didn't make any money.
Yeah. This seems to be the experience of a lot of people, like not making a whole lot out of the gate. And now they've even changed things. So last year they introduced a new royalty structure. And basically the way that their royalty structure has always worked is that you put your photos on there. As a photographer, you maintain the right to the photos. But basically when they license out the photos to people, depending on how many licenses they give out, they pay you like a certain percentage. So now it's like a tiered thing. There's basically 6 tiers. At the highest tier, you're getting paid 40%. And at the lowest tier, you're getting paid 15%. And now here's the big change. It resets every year. So the people who are, the people who have been on the service for a long time, photographers who have established themselves on the service, they would just automatically be in tier 6 because they've been around for that long. Now it depends on how many, like your performance, how many photos get licensed within a year period shows you what tier that you're going in. So before, if you were like an experienced photographer selling a lot on Shutterstock, you would just automatically be making like 40%. Now you have to be constantly uploading photos to stay at that level. That's the difference.
That's so interesting. Wow.
Well, what does it remind you of? What does it remind you of where creators are getting paid based on their performance in the last 12 months? I don't know. It doesn't sound familiar to me at all.
I don't know. Maybe people are watching us through it right now.
Yeah. It's a lot like the YouTube model. So pretty wild stuff here. And maybe bad news for photographers. And now they're trying to replace the photographers. Altogether, no, not really, but at least supplement what the photographers can do, especially with this new lockdown world that we're living in. So, pretty wild, man. Yeah,
you know what? I think the other perspective to look at it from is, I mentioned earlier how they could, it could be just a growing market that they see getting really big. We mentioned the initial investment and whatever, but the other perspective is that they just see it being a growing market that won't actually eclipse photography, but it's still a market, and they want to own the digital visual assets market.
In the same way that CGI hasn't replaced movies, right? Like people still shoot movies on cameras.
Exactly. Yeah.
But there's also fully CGI movies as well, right? So
but I mean, when you have articles like this, Shutterstock bets 75 million that photography won't always involve cameras. I think that's a little aggressive.
A little clickbaity,
That's a
right?
little aggressive. Yeah,
maybe, man, maybe. And we don't want to stoke the flames of fear in that respect. But I mean, in any circumstance where working photographers are getting a bit of the shaft, that's not something that makes me happy, obviously. So man. But just a few more things that I want to get in here. Very, very interesting. Where I've actually seen this stuff in my work is in real estate. There's a lot of agents who aren't staging anymore. They're like virtually staging, which means that you have like a CGI artist come in and they put in a nice coffee table. They put in a nice thing. And this definitely lines up with like the capabilities of digital renders, is that making stuff like tables, like physical objects, is definitely something that they can do. Definitely something that they excel at. Stuff like human faces and things like that is where it's hard, right?
Yeah.
But tables and chairs and whatnot, in terms of, and couches, like to stage a house virtually, pretty easy to do. And this is crazy, man. I found out that IKEA's been doing this forever, and literally no one has noticed. Since 2014, literally, like, this is nothing new. Since 2014, IKEA catalogs have been at least 75% CGI.
That's unreal.
Isn't that nuts, dude?
Yeah,
I've looked through these. We've all held this in our hands and looked through it. I never for a second. Did you ever think that it was CGI? Never.
No, I similar to you, when I read that, I was really surprised, because I don't know who they're going through specifically, if it's internal or what. It is really good.
Looks good, man. It looks good. And even some of the stuff that I've seen, like even at the level that I'm working at in real estate, like some of the stuff that people are able to do in terms of virtual staging is pretty incredible. So
it makes sense, right? From the end consumers. I mean, like from not, no, I know it takes away from some of your business, right? But it's like,
not really. I mean, they still need videos.
They still need video. But I mean, like you don't have to worry about it being clean. You don't have to worry about like physically staging or sourcing stuff. It's
bringing in a bunch of couches and a big frickin' truck and stuff. Forget it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, there's probably a bit more of a cost to getting somebody to do this. I don't know what the software, how comprehensible the software is or how easy to use it is, but I'm assuming that it's quite.
You want to know how easy to use the software is specifically, and which software that you would use, and the hardware requirements that you would need to run such software?
Did I just cue you up?
This is why we're doing a podcast with Jared Poirier, the researcher extraordinaire. So let's talk about how these beautiful images, stealing money out of the pockets, just ripping the pockets out of photographers, how all this is being done by these digital artists. How are they robbing photographers here? So basically, there are three big pieces of software that I researched, and these are some of the most popular. Basically, if you had a combination of these three, you could pretty much do anything in the world of CGI, as far as I can tell. These are ZBrush, Blender, and Octane, and there are quite a few other programs, but these are the big ones that I could find. ZBrush is a modeling and sculpting software. So basically very similar to like sculpting a piece of clay, how you make models for video games and stuff like that, and for movies as well. Some of the places where you've seen this software, ZBrush, in action. This is the software of choice for ILM, which does all the Star Wars stuff. Weta Digital, which does Peter Jackson stuff. So we're talking... they've worked on Avatar. They've worked on Lord of the Rings, like that Gollum thing. Probably they built Gollum right here in ZBrush. And Kong, District 9, all of those films as well. Yeah, really interesting stuff, man. As well as Epic Games are a big user of ZBrush. They made Fortnite and the Unreal Engine and all that type of stuff, which has made like game development explode. So they're very important.
Well, they've also taken over the Rocket League franchise.
Oh wow!
As well.
Yeah. So definitely consequential here with the ZBrush. Blender just seems to be like the software that does everything: 3D modeling, texturing, rigging, fluid simulations, smoke simulations, particle and soft body simulations, sculpting, animating, motion graphics, video editing, everything it seems like you can do in Blender. And Octane, now this is the one that is probably the most important, because this Octane software mostly uses your graphics card, and it is able to produce the most photorealistic images. by basically bypassing the other hardware on your computer and focusing down on having a good graphics card. That's how Octane is able to render photoreal really quickly. So definitely some interesting stuff. If you guys want to try some of this stuff at home, it used to take like a computer that you would need to like start a business and then take out a bank loan, or maybe like even rob a bank, I guess would be another option if you wanted to do some 3D renders. It's gotten a lot more accessible. You don't probably have to rob a bank anymore. You do have to have
leave
a
the
pretty
ski
good...
mask at home.
Yeah. you do probably have to have a pretty decent computer. 4 to 8 gigs of RAM will get you by with most of this software. A pretty decent processor, maybe 2 to 4 cores, definitely at least 2, maybe 4 cores would be nice. And then obviously for Octane, you need a really good graphics card. But other than that, you probably have a computer sitting in your house where you could do some 3D renders. So interesting stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And to that point, like the base level spec on computers are getting better and better. And then even just being able to build your own computer, like the resources are more and more accessible. So it's something where you see yourself getting excited by the idea of doing this, to Jared's point, I think it's something that's not unrealistic.
No, definitely not, man. And I even have a little bit more detail on that, being the nerd that I am, not to bore everybody, but I think we got a little time left. We got like
knowledge expert, not nerd.
Knowledge expert. I kind of nerded out on this, man. I watched this channel called Corridor Crew. If you guys have you ever checked them out?
Oh, you know what? I might be thinking of Blue Quarter. No.
Anyways, I'll send them to you after. We'll maybe link them down in the description. But Corridor Crew, they're a pretty big channel, a little bigger than the Galaxy channel, but that's all right. Maybe one day we'll have them on. Just a little cross promotion. But they do digital effects, and they have a really good breakdown of how to get realistic digital images, and especially like to composite them into real scenes. Which seems to be what a lot of this Turbo Squid business is all about. A few things that they show I think they show this really well in their Impossible Domino Run video, so I'll definitely link that so you guys can check it out. Having a real world reference is a big part of it. So if you have like a lot of photos to reference, let's say you're trying to build a stock image of a fence, you're going to want to, if you're going to want to build that with like 3D render software, have a lot of photos of fences around that you can reference. Another really important thing is using HDRI imaging. So that's high dynamic range imaging. We've talked about this before, actually. High dynamic range imagery essentially is just capturing like the most of the light that you possibly can, and the way that you do that is by going down to like underexposing your image, taking a properly exposed image, and then taking an overexposed image and stacking them together. And that's how you're able to get like a really robust read of like all of the light conditions of a certain space. Kind of pair that with like a panoramic thing, and then you can use those light conditions, like that information, to make your 3D render look a lot more realistic. So you literally could do it with with an SLR. You could do it with like a frickin' Nikon crop sensor or something. You could do an HDR image. So pretty interesting. Again, accessible. And then a few other things that they do just to make things look a little bit more realistic is adding some extra directional lighting in these programs like Blender, and adding imperfections as well is something that really improves the photorealistic nature of digital renders. So I just thought that was super interesting there. And again, places where it excels, which makes perfect sense when we talk about the IKEA stuff and the real estate. Doing like physical objects, couches, chairs, walls, buildings, all of these things, pretty simple to do in a photorealistic way. But like human faces and things like that, you're still going to need photographers for a while, I think.
Yeah, interesting. You know what? I think like some of the accessibility points that we referenced, paired with a conversation we were having earlier in the podcast around being able to adapt and introduce new aspects to your business. Like, odds are if you're doing content creation on a on a semi-consistent basis, you probably have a computer that can handle the content. And so you might already have a device that's capable of doing this. And so if you see it being another thing you want to add to your portfolio, then there might be something for you to do.
Yeah. Is it going to replace photography?
No.
No, I don't think so. I don't think Shutterstock thinks so. I don't think even Petapixel thinks so. I think they just want people to read the article.
Exactly.
Which go read the article. We're gonna link it down in the description. But definitely interesting to dive into here. Definitely interesting to get your perspective here, Michael. And I appreciate everybody letting me nerd out a little bit here. I just thought that it was some pretty interesting stuff, and maybe something that we'll get into a little bit more in the future on Photography Brothers, or maybe on my vlog. Maybe I'm gonna try some of this stuff out. Maybe I'll get myself a blender or something like that. And
I have a blender upstairs, but I use it for smoothies.
That's sick, man. Well, bring it down. Let's do some
plug it
photos,
in
like
my computer.
Make some Shutterstock money. I don't know how it works, man. I never you're the one who's stock photo pro here, but I guess.
No.
Anyways, don't come to the Photography Brothers for advice on how to make money off of stock photos.
Not yet.
Making money off of photos we've done, though, so we can tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah.
And I think that's today's show, man.
It's been a good one.
It's been a good one. I hope that all of our listeners out there enjoyed the sultry sound of our voices coming through your earbuds. We hope that all our viewers on YouTube enjoy seeing the brothers with their eyeballs, and potentially learning a little bit more about photography along the way. So it's been fun. Michael, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, as always, for your contributions to the podcast. Thank you to editor Sydney for editing the podcast. And thank you to you, our audience. And we'll see you next week.
Have a good one, guys.